The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
This is a triumph for American patients that will save lives and improve the health of millions and millions of Americans.
Lowering the prices of major weight loss drugs. President Trump's big announcement from the Oval Office on another deal reached with Big Pharma. Then tightening restrictions on federal immigration enforcement agents in Chicago. The ruling today that will rein in the agents' use of tear gas and other measures as protests continue. Plus, it's not a new thing. Sex spies in the United States to steal secrets for foreign adversaries. But now the honeypots are reportedly targeting a new industry. Good evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. Right now, the pressure on lawmakers to end the longest government shutdown in history is building as day 36 nears its end. Senate leaders met again this morning to try to hammer out a deal, according to sources from both parties, but it's not clear when they'll hold the next vote. And starting in just a few hours from now, the Federal Aviation Administration will reduce flight capacity by 10% at 40 airports. This includes major hubs like New York, Chicago, and Atlanta. You can see here a map of all the affected airports across the country. The air traffic control system is under immense strain as its employees work without pay. A federal judge is now ordering the Trump administration to fully fund SNAP benefits this month in response to a challenge from cities and nonprofits. The administration most recently said it would pay for 65% of the benefits. It first said it would not fund the program at all, then said it would cover half after two judges mandated at least partial payments. Well, taking a look now at the White House, where President Trump is meeting with the leaders of 5 Central Asian countries as he tries to get around China in securing rare earth minerals. Countries including Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, and others are all represented there tonight. Beijing has agreed to delay newly announced export restrictions on these critical rare earths. Central Asia has rare earth reserves, but needs investment to harness them. In the wake of President Trump's comments that the United States will be ramping up nuclear weapons testing, Russia is now drawing up its own plans for nuclear tests. The National News Desk, Kayla Gaskins, has that story from Washington.
International discussions around testing nuclear weapons sharply escalating. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordering his government to prepare plans for nuclear weapons testing.
I instruct the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, Special Services, and relevant civilian agencies to do everything possible to gather additional information on this matter.
Putin's request follows comments from President Trump, who said the United States is ready to resume its own nuclear testing.
Why do we need to test our nuclear weapons?
Well, because you have to see how they work.
In a meeting Wednesday with his Security Council, Putin said Russia has adhered to the international treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons tests, but warned if the U.S. resumed such testing, Russia would be under obligation to take reciprocal measures. Putin's defense minister, meanwhile, sending forces and assets to a test site in northern Russia.
We must accept our nuclear potential in readiness to inflict unacceptable damage on the enemy under any circumstances.
Trump telling 60 Minutes Russia and China are already testing.
We're the only country that doesn't test. Russia's testing nuclear weapons.
My understanding
And China's testing them too. You just don't know about it.
The last time the U.S. detonated a nuclear device as part of a test was in 1992. Russia's last known nuclear explosive test was in 1990, and China's in 1996. Days after Putin said Russia tested a nuclear-powered underwater drone, Russia displayed a new submarine last weekend designed to carry nuclear torpedoes. And early Wednesday, the U.S. successfully launched an unarmed test of the Minuteman III missile, part of the U.S. deterrent system meant to be launched only in response to a nuclear attack. And amid talk of resuming nuclear weapons testing, President Trump says he's spoken with Putin and China's President Xi about denuclearization. Trump says the 3 leaders are all working on a plan now to all denuclearize.
And Kayla, has Russia or China responded to these accusations from President Trump about their conducting of these secret nuclear tests?
Well, Taylor, both Russia and China publicly maintain that they are keeping in line with this international agreement that's from 1996, not to conduct nuclear weapons tests. Now, the U.S. and China never officially ratified that agreement. Russia did ratify it and then rescinded its ratification back in 2023. North Korea, however, has conducted nuclear testing back in 2017. They were not part of that 1996 agreement. But what is allowed, Taylor, under that agreement is something called subcritical testing. This allows for weapons reliability tests without triggering a nuclear chain reaction. Testing delivery systems is also allowed. That is what the U.S. just did on Wednesday morning with the ICBM test.
All right. In Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you. A federal judge is ordering immigration agents in the Chicago area to limit their use of force against protesters and journalists. The judge ruled agents have been violating people's constitutional rights. She heard arguments yesterday in a lawsuit accusing ICE agents of using excessive force. The Department of Homeland Security said it plans to appeal. Well, a former DOJ employee who threw a sandwich at a Customs and Border Protection agent has been found not guilty of assault. Today, Sean Dunn was acquitted of the misdemeanor charge for his action on August 10th that made him a symbol of resistance to the Trump administration's D.C. crime crackdown. It comes after prosecutors failed to secure a felony assault indictment against Dunn. Just a few hours ago, the Supreme Court allows the Trump administration to enforce a policy blocking trans and non-binary people from choosing sex markers on their passports that align with their identity. In a brief, unsigned order, the court said the policy doesn't appear to discriminate against transgender people, writing in part, quote, displaying passport holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. Expensive weight loss drugs will soon see a dramatic price reduction in the United States. The National News Desk Matt Gelka reports on the White House's latest drug price negotiation.
Millions of Americans who have turned to GLP-1 medications for weight loss could soon be paying far less. The White House struck a deal with Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, the makers of Wegovy and Zepbound, to slash the prices of the drugs used to treat diabetes and chronic obesity. Those shots can cost someone between $500 to more than $1,000 for a month's supply if their insurance doesn't cover it. The new deal brings an average monthly payment of around $350 to start, with the plan for it to drop to $250 over the next 2 years.
Americans have been spending as much as 520% more for Zepbound and 1,400% more for Wegovy than patients in Europe. Think of that. 1,400% more than a patient in Europe for the exact same box. And that ends starting today.
A report from Fair Health said around 2% of all Americans were taking GLP-1s for just obesity. That's almost 7 million people. That number doubles to almost 14 million when you include Americans also taking them for diabetes. The medications are set to be available through Trump RX, a new website in development that offers prescription drugs negotiated on by the Trump administration at lower prices.
We thought it was 125 million pounds. Mr. President, our estimate, based on the company numbers as well, is Americans will lose 135 billion pounds by the midterms. But I don't measure it in pounds. I measure it in saved lives.
The deal is the latest reduction in drug prices negotiated by the White House, following multi-billion-dollar agreements with Pfizer and AstraZeneca to lower drug prices and expand production in the United States. Medications that treat everything from arthritis to COPD to asthma were included in the earlier deals. Drug companies were facing the threat of steep tariffs on pharmaceutical imports without new agreements. The Trump RX website is not online yet, but the administration expects it to be up and running with new drug pricing by the end of the year. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
9 people are still missing right now after a UPS plane tragically crashed at the Louisville airport Tuesday. The NTSB says when the plane hit, it was going just over 200 miles per hour. Despite the massive explosion, investigators were able to recover the black box recorder. We are told the coroner is on scene working to identify the victims. We're told that one of them is a child. Investigators now say it may take up to a year before we know exactly what happened because of the extent of the damage to what little is left of the plane. The shelter-in-place warning is still in place, but has been reduced for a quarter-mile radius of the scene. Dallas Cowboys defensive lineman Marshawn Nealand has died at the age of 24. Texas officials say Nealand was found dead early this morning from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Nealand recovered a blocked punt for a touchdown in Monday night's game against Arizona. He starred at Western Michigan before the Cowboys drafted him. Nealand's agent is asking for privacy for his family. Well, and now a former elementary school teacher who was shot by her 6-year-old student back in 2023 will receive $10 million in damages. A Virginia jury reaching the verdict today in the case between Abigail Zwerner and a school administrator. The outcome comes after Zwerner filed a $40 million lawsuit against the assistant principal, alleging they dismissed concerns regarding a student potentially bringing a gun to school. Zwerner was shot in the chest and the hand. A long-awaited development in a decades-long cold case. Seattle police have charged a man with the 1994 murder of 14-year-old Tanya Frazier, who disappeared after a summer school class. Police say they connected 57-year-old Mark Russ to the case after testing DNA evidence from the scene.
For more than 30 years, Tanya's family wanted nothing more than answers, closure, and justice.
Russ is currently being held without bail. The criminal case against Boeing after two 737 MAX plane crashes that killed hundreds has been dismissed. A federal judge in Texas has agreed to dismiss a criminal conspiracy charge as part of a deal that requires the aircraft maker to pay or invest an additional $1.1 billion in fines, compensation for the crash victims' families, and internal safety and quality measures. All 346 passengers and crew members died when the planes went down off the coast of Indonesia and Ethiopia less than 5 months apart in 2018 and 2019. One of the most powerful politicians in American history is retiring. Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi says she's not seeking re-election to a U.S. House, closing a history-making career. Now, she was the first woman in the Speaker's office and represented San Francisco for nearly 40 years. President Trump had harsh words for the Democrat today, and House Speaker Mike Johnson pointed to her retirement as a sign the party is shifting further left.
I think she was a tremendous liability for the country.
And on Dick Cheney?
I thought she was an evil woman who did a poor job.
Even the famous San Francisco liberal is not far left enough for the neo-Marxists. We commend her for her services. We all do, everyone who serves in Congress, but there should be a lot written about that.
Former President Barack Obama put out a statement saying, in part, Pelosi will go down in history as one of the best speakers ever. Pelosi says she'll finish out her final year in office. Coming up, affordability and cost of living are top of mind for many Americans. What new reports are saying about the state of the economy, including an outlook for the holiday retail season. Then faulty equipment. It's an issue that's prompting one company to recall more than 800,000 exercise bikes, and this isn't the first time it's happened. Plus, the heartwarming homecoming for a World War II veteran. We'll show you where he was laid to rest with full military honors. We're back in 90 seconds. Speaker Mike Johnson says he believes the Supreme Court will sign off on President Trump's tariffs, even though the justices peppered government lawyers with aggressive questions yesterday.
And while Congress has a role to play in tariffs and related trade and economic policy, the executive branch does as well. And I think the president has used that well within the bounds of what he's allowed to do.
Johnson says the high court's barbed questioning is all part of judicial review. GOP leadership passed a rule this year effectively giving Trump room to apply import taxes. Congress has the authority on such matters. Well, we are getting an updated look at the state of the labor market. Newly released private data shows a sharp spike in job losses. This follows Democrat wins in Tuesday's elections as the economy remains voters' top concern. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a closer look at the numbers.
There are flashing red warning signs for the job market, as last month was the worst October for layoffs in 22 years. According to new data from the outplacement firm Challenger Gray & Christmas, in October, U.S. employers announced more than 153,000 job cuts. That's the highest figure for the month since 2003 and more than 2.5 times the cuts from the month prior. Why do companies say they're cutting jobs? Well, they cite general cost cutting and AI. But Challenger says the top reason is what they call the DOGE impact. DOGE, meaning President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, tasked with slashing government jobs and spending. With that comes fewer jobs for contractors and lost funding for private and nonprofit entities.
The stock market's hitting record highs.
President Trump insists he's ushering a golden age for the economy.
We've done so much. You know, energy is way down. Look at energy. We're going to have $2 gasoline. I did that. That brings everything else down. Groceries are way down other than beef.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the overall consumer inflation rate is actually back to the same level it was when Trump took office, 3%. On energy, average gas prices have remained steady, slightly over $3 a gallon, but energy and gas utility bills have soared. After sweeping Democratic victories in Tuesday's election, the president says Republicans are not communicating with voters.
It's no good if we do a great job and you don't talk about it. And I don't think they talk about it enough. You know, they have this new word called affordability, and they don't talk about it enough.
Democrats, especially after Tuesday, working to assert themselves as the party with solutions.
Life has gotten more expensive under Donald Trump and Republican policies. This is from a group of people led by Donald Trump who promised that costs were going to go down on day one.
Looking ahead to how consumers will navigate these economic conditions, on Thursday, the National Retail Federation announced its holiday forecast. And they predict spending will be roughly 4% higher than last year, but seasonal hiring is expected to be the lowest in 15 years. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The average age of a first-time home buyer is now 40. It's the oldest it's ever been. That's according to the National Association of Realtors. The group says the percentage of first-time buyers in the market has dropped to a record low of 21%. And high mortgage rates and home prices are a persistent challenge. Well, Peloton is recalling every unit it ever sold of its original Bike Plus over a seat post issue. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says Peloton received reports that the seat post broke and fell off the equipment during use. 2 people were injured. The recall includes 833,000 units made between 2019 and 2022. Consumers should stop using the bikes and contact Peloton for a free seat post that they can install at home. Back in May 2023, Peloton recalled the base bike models over the same issue after 13 injuries were reported. Well, the FDA is now cracking down on counterfeit Botox. Health officials sent warning letters to 18 companies. Botox works by temporarily blocking nerve cells and signals. Doctors say patients should seek immediate medical care if they show signs of difficulty swallowing or breathing, slurred speech, or even muscle weakness. The FDA urges patients to only get the drug from licensed health professionals. Sex spies from China and Russia are now emerging across the U.S. and targeting a different group of people to try to steal the country's technology and state secrets. A former CIA operative says he's seen firsthand how these spies use honeypot tactics to compromise their targets. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, looked into it and has more.
Tech industry leaders in Silicon Valley are now speaking out, saying they've recently been approached by would-be honeypots or spies as part of a, quote, sex warfare operation by China and Russia, all aimed at stealing American technology secrets. One of the many men recently targeted, James Mulvenin, works at Premier Consulting, which provides risk assessments for American companies investing in China. Mulvenin telling the Times of London, quote, "I'm getting an enormous number of very sophisticated LinkedIn requests from the same type of attractive young Chinese women. It really seems to have ramped up recently." A former CIA operative, J. Michael Waller, says he's seen firsthand how China and Russia are using honeypot tactics to steal U.S. secrets and even compromise politicians, pointing to an encounter he had years ago at a work event in Poland after a woman approached him saying she worked for the Polish government.
She kindly invited herself up to my room. And then I looked at her and I said, no 25-year-old woman is going to want to be hanging around me for that kind of thing. You're a spy.
Waller says he then alerted the authorities, who threw her out of the country. But what he encountered is a form of psychological warfare, the spies messing with people's heads.
They do the pickup part, the making them feel important part, the playing to their ego part. Who's the lonely geek behind the computer who doesn't have a life? Who's the lonely bureaucrat who doesn't have a life?
Now, one notable honeypot case involves Democratic California Representative Eric Swalwell, who was targeted by a suspected Chinese intelligence operative named Christine Fang. Swalwell cut off contact with her in 2015 after the FBI alerted him about its concerns, but the incident led to widespread controversy, specifically about his position on the House Intelligence Committee.
This is how in-depth the Chinese are at spying on America, of wanting to know, of stealing our secrets. And the Intel Committee is different than any other committee. This is where America's secrets are kept. This is where the individuals are able to know things that other members are not.
Now, following an investigation, Swalwell was cleared of any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the House Committee on Homeland Security warns the Chinese Communist Party has carried out over 60 espionage operations inside the U.S. just over the past 4 years. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Coming up, a population boom out west, the strain it's put on builders trying to keep up. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Utah.
Adding new homes, but not enough in an already tough market for buyers.
Both of them have great jobs here.
Janae Bailey has two sons in their 20s.
They are having some difficulty finding a house that's affordable, too.
I have a nephew who's trying to buy a house.
How's that going?
It doesn't go very well. Things are expensive.
And now this report from public policy group Envision Utah and the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. It says Utah will need 840,000 new homes over the next 30 years. We're on track now, it says, for just over 600,000.
More than 300,000 homes are going to have to be built in currently undeveloped vacant land. That's the equivalent of about 11 daybreaks a decade over the next 30 years.
New home construction will need to be supercharged on raw land, in cities, and near mass transit.
I never met my uncle, but I'm feeling like I'm getting to know him through all of the preparation for this.
Norma Davis attended today's long-awaited homecoming of her uncle, Staff Sergeant John Pagluso, who went off to fight with the boys in World War II.
I've heard about him all my life from my mother and my aunts.
Sergeant Pagluso lost his life during a bombing mission over Papua New Guinea, October 5th, 1942. His remains were identified 83 years later.
The remains were identified on his mother's birthday, my grandmother's birthday, which I thought was pretty amazing. And then I got the call on my birthday.
Sergeant Pagluso arriving home with his family, fellow veterans, first responders, and the New York National Guard Military Forces Honor Guard in waiting. He will be laid to rest with full military honors.
He'll be buried next to my grandmother and grandfather.
Coming up, Thanksgiving is just around the corner. The meal deals that will help you feed your friends and family without breaking the bank. Right after this. Thanksgiving Day is exactly 3 weeks away, and if you're in charge of hosting, it's about time to start thinking about the menu. Thankfully, there are several meal deals this year. The first one will help save you big while also saving you time. Amazon has announced a meal to feed 5 people for just $25 delivered to your doorstep. It includes an 8-pound frozen butterball turkey, several sides plus dessert. Target's holiday meal feeds a family of 4 for under $20. Walmart, Aldi, and Lidl also offering Thanksgiving dinner bundles that feed up to 10 people for $40 or less. There you go. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.